Hello there, welcome back to the channel. And to my American viewers that apparently make up 48% of my viewing demographic, happy Independence Day. And remember, anytime you want us to come back, no, just no. No. But in the spirit of the 4th of July, yeehaw, I suppose, we are going to cover the Harvesters from the Independence Day franchise, as requested a while back that I do a series of videos on these, and I thought, yeah, go on then, why not? We're going to start off today with the City Destroyers, these absolutely gigantuan starships used to launch a coordinated strike against all the major urban centers on Earth. And just what exactly these ships were and what they were capable of. But before we do, like, share, subscribe, and again, happy Independence Day to my American viewers wherever you are in the world. And to everyone else in the world who doesn't care about that, Independence Day is still a good movie, so let's get into it. The City Destroyers were absolutely massive, saucer-shaped vessels. They were actually parasitical in nature in a way in that they were attached to a mothership. They detached from that vessel and then would descend down to the planet. They were approximately 15 miles in diameter, were pretty much circular. That's 25 kilometers to everyone that doesn't use miles-ish. And they were protected by incredibly advanced shields. They have a very interesting flower pattern, is the only way I can sort of describe it. It kind of looks like petals to me, or leaves on the underside of the ship, that I don't actually know why they have that patterning. I mean, there's sort of Aztecing on the hull of the ship in general, but I often wondered if they had something to do with the ship's anti-gravity systems, because one of the main features of these vessels was their ability to hover. These ships descended into Earth's atmosphere, positioned themselves over all the major cities and major population centers, major infrastructure locations, government centers, any major center of resistance. Remember, their goal was the extermination of the human race because we were in their way. The ships hovered, waiting for their coordinated signal to attack, and then unleashed their main gun. The main gun being a ventrally mounted energy cannon, which was capable of leveling huge sections of a city in a single shot. The vessel would then simply reposition itself and fire again and again and again. A very destructive and efficient weapon at taking out pretty much everything underneath the ship. While its shields were raised, the City Destroyers were practically invulnerable to all known weapons. It's not known if their shields even felt the impact of a nuclear device against them, but I mean, we tried, I suppose. Other than the main gun and its shields as a defense system, the vessels did possess some limited armaments we saw them utilize, although they were only seen to be used once. During Earth's attempt to communicate with the ship, a slit opened up in the side and fired out an energy pulse. Now, it is possible that it was actually a fighter hovering inside the pulse that fired at the helicopter, but I'm going to go with it's probably a weapon on the ship itself, or at least some limited defensive capabilities. As I said, this ship was basically a saucer, a sort of concave saucer, so it had a dome top and a flat underside, and had what was determined by humanity to be the front of the ship, although it could have been the back for all we know, but it could have just been a docking port, was a sort of wedge stuck in one side of it. The vessel didn't seem to move in the direction where that wedge was, so it was omnidirectional, so it probably was irrelevant. The ship worked primarily not only as a city destroyer, as we called it, so it would obliterate everything underneath it, but also carried thousands of fighters and soldiers down to the planet's surface. Once they had finished blowing up whatever underneath them, they'd deploy fighters to take out smaller centers, fleeing residents, other ships that the locals may have, fighters, or any other threat to the major ship which may exist. These fighters would swarm attack, themselves defended by advanced shields. They were extremely maneuverable and very fast and capable of spaceflight. They didn't really need to be deployed from the City Destroyers, but they came part and parcel of its defenses. So in a sense, the City Destroyers were more like an aircraft carrier. Although they were armed, they probably weren't a frontline warship. Fighting wasn't their main goal, wasn't their main purpose. The fighters were their primary defensive screen and their ability to deal with other enemies on a micro level. The big gun was the main reason for the ship's deployment to the surface, not any alternative armaments. Basically, that cannon was overkill for trying to take out small targets that were fleeing in all directions. It wouldn't be able to catch up with them or hit them accurately enough, and they'd keep getting away, so that's why it had the fighters, but then could deploy troops to mop up as well. Like all the Harvester vessels, however, it was centrally, not necessarily controlled, but sort of working from a centralized signal from the mothership. This coordinated all of their assets, but also seemed to regulate some of the ship's systems, notably its shields. By infecting the mothership with a virus, it was able to affect every other ship in the network, which brought down their shields. More accurately, the virus was designed to tell the ship to lower its shields, which is what it did. But it was because of this interconnected coordination signal between all these assets that it was able to do it. This took out the shields on the mothership, the City Destroyer, and the fighters, and potentially any other assets that they were deploying at the time. So they became vulnerable, but due to the vessel's enormous size, conventional weapons simply had no impact. It's possible nukes could have at this point, but that wasn't attempted. They had to be engaged by multiple swarms of fighters and ground attack, sort of anti-aircraft weapons, I assume, but they were making no significant dent, and the ship was simply carrying on lumbering away because of its heavy armor and massive size. The damage was literally superficial. Its only known vulnerability was the main cannon. This opened up and exposed a massive part of the underbelly of the ship behind the armor, and also the very nature of the weapon was a huge energy output. Once destroyed by just a single Earth fighter, it took out the entire ship, and concentrated attacks on this location subsequently around the world resulted in the destruction of these. A nuke likely would have worked anyway, because I'm thinking of it, one was detonated aboard the mothership, although it was inside it, which is a little different. But that took out the entire mothership, which was several times bigger than this ship, something like 1/32 the size of the moon or something like that. It was a massive, massive ship. And that is effectively this ship. We actually never got to see really the inside of these vessels. We can assume that architecturally it was similar to the inside of the mothership and probably quite cavernous, but was designed primarily as a transport craft and vehicle for that gun, the soldiers and the fighters, so that would have been its primary role. It probably would have been, I would guess, capable of interstellar travel on its own, just in case it ever needed to, but Harvester culture was very hive-like, so it's also possible that they never envisioned that these ships would need to be able to do that. But considering one of the fighters made its way to Earth many decades earlier independently, and if that didn't require the presence of a mothership to get the fighter there, and the fighter, assuming the fighters can't travel interstellar on their own, which I suppose they could, we'll discuss that in the video about the fighters, one of these ships would have had to bring it, or something else would have had to bring it, and then that brings into question, why didn't they recover it when it crashed? Why leave the humans with such a tactical advantage? Doesn't make any sense. There's another thing that doesn't make sense, actually. The ship itself. Why? Right, we've got strategic weapons now we could fire from orbit. Right? A tungsten dart dropped from Earth's orbit would have, the equivalent kinetic impact of a small nuke. Never mind actually deploying a nuke. You tell me these people's energy weapons can't fire from space? They had to deploy ships to the ground like this. It had to be so near, practically touching the tops of buildings to fire. They couldn't have used viral weapons. They'd clearly been coming to Earth, studying humanity. It didn't even matter if the viral weapons didn't take out everyone. You'd weaken the human race. So, I don't know. Anyway, there's a lot of questions to the tactics of the Harvesters that I question, but some of them could just be arrogance and believing that themselves untouchable. As it was pointed out, they're similar to us biologically in that they're quite soft, but their technology is incredibly advanced and it's hard to get through. But that is the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe. Happy Independence Day again to my American viewers. And tell me what you think about these ships, and could their tactics have been better? Because they could. They really could. And suggest some better ways of wiping out the planet from orbit. Bye-bye.